Hi, everybody. Welcome to this extremely religious version of the Paddock Pass podcast, the preview to Assen, TT Circuit Assen, that wonderful track there in the northern Netherlands. By no means any sort of edifice related to any kind of doctrine or whatever. I'm Adam Wheeler, and I'm going to be gritting my teeth all the way through this episode, but we do have a stellar show today because we have none other than Collin Veijer making his second appearance on the Paddock Pass podcast and his first chatting about, well, the very fast ascendancy in the Moto3 class. Because we have Collin on the show, we also have Moto3's latest, biggest fan in Mr. David Emmett. Dave, you've been facilitating Collin's appearance on the podcast this week. Has it been in Dutch or English? And has there been much talk about spires and things like that?
There has been the very briefest conversation. Most of it has been through his manager because I'm a good boy and do things the right way. But it's mostly been in Dutch because, that's I speak Dutch and he speaks Dutch. It seems better that way.
Is it by coincidence that you're not wearing the Collin Veijer fan club T-shirt at the moment? Or?
I haven't got a whole week's worth, so I'm saving it for Sunday.
Neil, can you really believe that Dave is towing the line and doing things correctly? There's to be some sort of subterfuge and rebellious nature in there somewhere. Maybe he's contacting the manager and sending him fuck off messages as well in some sort of other way. But Neil, how are you? Are you bearing the heat as well as I am in Catalonia?
You're looking a little more tanned than I am, Ed. I'm a bit sweaty and very pale as always. So I wouldn't say so. We're recording this on Monday, which is the San Juan holiday in Barcelona, so it's a public holiday. And when I got up and had breakfast on my balcony earlier, there was a group of young men who were still sculling beers with great enthusiasm at about 9:30, and it was kind of like looking into a portal of my life, maybe like 10 to 15 years ago. So it made me feel very, very old. So I'm feeling slightly humbled on today's edition of the show.
There's still time to go sculling beers.
We're on the edge of another MotoGP double. And, guys, I mean, Assen first, I think there was originally going to be some MotoGP 75th anniversary activities going on there. It's been pushed back now to Silverstone purely because it gives the teams more lead time to get stuff ready, such as the retro liveries that they'll be porting in the Grand Prix of Great Britain. But, I mean, what a track to go to. I mean, Dave, apart from your daily battles of trying to be able to park your motorcycle in P1, I gather that it's pretty much a signature event, and not just because you can ride there and it's not that far away from your home, but there's something special about this Grand Prix, isn't there?
It's funny about you should mention parking my motorcycle because I was listening to the Kroonburner podcast, which is a Dutch podcast with Moto2 commentator Ivan van der Valk, and he was just talking about the TT and saying exactly the same thing, that he has an annual battle with the fella. He even knows the bloke on the gate, he knows him quite well, but he still has a battle every year trying to get his bloody motorbike in. So you're starting to think it's a... they're doing it on purpose. So, but it's a magnificent venue. I mean, it's a historic venue. It has been going through. I mean, it's been going. There's been racing at Assen since 1926, and the first one was in 1925. So it's been going for a very, very long time. And the track. I mean, I love the track. It is a shame that we lost the most characteristic part of it, the Northern Loop. Mostly for financial reasons, because they needed the money, and also because the city of Assen is starting to encroach on the track. So, but yeah, it still reflects the countryside to an extent, because those sort of like fast sort of flicks that you get around there, if you ride around the roads around there, you get something similar where roads are following the sort of the creeks and the
contours, aren't they?
Exactly. Yeah. Yes, exactly. And by the way, in case you were going to accuse Holland of being a low-lying country, then I actually I had occasion to look it up, and the Circuit of Assen is at the heady elevation of 12 meters above sea level. So take your oxygen masks, lads.
Yeah, good job. They don't have to worry about carburation anymore. I mean, that would have been a real headache, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would have been absolute nightmare. Absolute nightmare.
Neil, I first went to Assen when I was 7 years old in the 1983 Grand Prix. Don't have too many memories of it. Some funny photos, has to be said. A decidedly odd choice of headwear. But yeah, enough about that. What does Assen mean for you?
I mean, it's. I was thinking about this, and I was looking back through the sort of history books and previous winners, and I was sort of thinking about some of the racing that we've had there recently. And I think in recent years it maybe hasn't served up the best racing in MotoGP. It's always been a thrilling track in the smaller classes, even in Moto2, which doesn't necessarily. I wasn't renowned for producing fantastic racing, even in years gone by. It has done there at Assen, but I kind of think the kind of the magnitude of the event, the history of the place, the number of people that come in through the gates really does make this like quite a special time. And it's just I mean, I do love the Netherlands, and I'm not just saying that because one of our dear colleagues is on this call, but it's a great place to visit at this time of year in June. And yeah, you kind of just get a bit swept up in the history of it all. So yeah, what we've been going, there's been a Grand Prix at Assen every single year since 1949 bar 2020, the COVID hit year. Yeah, you just kind of you can kind of feel that history when you're there.
You say that you love the Netherlands, Neil, but you only ever visit Amsterdam. So how can you say that?
Well, I went to Utrecht last year, Dave. So
well, goodness me, one day you might visit somewhere else. It's a lovely country. It's got some amazing medieval cities.
I'm still waiting to get my invite to your house, Dave. So.
She's been a regular in Amsterdam for years, Dave. I mean, if she moves, then Neil will. Sorry, no, I don't want to cast any aspersions whatsoever.
You're making me sound like a terrible person.
On a slightly more serious note, thanks ever so much to Renthal.com. Check out the street section of their website for any decent accessories you want for your street bike. There's a whole load to choose from, and we really can vouch for the quality as well as the pricing and the delivery. Everything you need from a half decent upgrade for your motorcycle, then look at Renthal.com. Thanks also to Fly Racing. If you're considering any kind of apparel or protection for your street bike or even for your off-road bike, then there's loads to choose from thanks to the Americans. I can certainly vouch for their Formula S helmet. Really comfortable, great ventilation, looks good, and there's loads of safety tech inside it as well. I also want to mention KTM at some point because I've taken delivery of a KTM 990 Duke. Perhaps we can talk about it a bit later in the podcast, but I'm pretty amazed so far. I mean, it's a brand new motorcycle. It's not built in China, in contrary to some opinions that seem to be surfacing on the internet. And yeah, pretty good stuff, but maybe we'll mention that a bit later.
It's a lovely engine, isn't it? That parallel twin is just a fantastic engine. So,
completely. Yes. I'll mention it a little bit later, but first I wanted to go back to you first, Neil, just maybe for like an Assen memory, because there's certainly a few, isn't there? Even if we take into consideration the Heert-Timmer chicane. Said well, Dave?
Close. Heert-Timmer is just the, but yeah, not bad. I'm going to do, once we've got done, finished doing this, I'm going to do a pronunciation guide and stick it up on YouTube.
We've got that there already. I think it was
have we? All right, I was looking for it. Right, okay, right. I shall because I wanted to share it to make sure that people actually pronounce things correctly.
I think for 2 years it was our most watched YouTube clip, which said a lot for our presence really on that platform for the podcast. But
doing a bit better now, though. Fortunately, there are some people who are foolish enough to want to actually look at our faces while they listen to us rabbit on about nonsense.
Neil, an Assen memory?
I mean, do I have to have just one, Ed?
Well, yeah, I mean, just pick one that sort of stands out. I mean, when I say that, I ask you that question, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
First thing that comes to mind is probably, I mean, the Heert-Timmer chicane and some of the last lap scraps that we've had into there. I think of Hayden and Edwards in 06, and I obviously think of Rossi and Marquez in 2015.
2015.
Yeah. And not just that, but the sort of the press conference that we had just after the race as well, which was just absolutely box office, where both of them were sat either side of Jorge Lorenzo, I think, or maybe they were sat next to each other. Lorenzo was on the end of the table. And I think it was the first time in public where they were both sat together, and the kind of the simmering tension was really apparent. There had been like a few snipes and a few barbs in their rider debriefs before then that year. But that was the first time where they were sat at the same table next to each other, and you could really see that something was bubbling up deep underneath. And that was my first year working in MotoGP, just by chance. And it was, I remember just standing thinking, like, what have I walked into? This is absolutely tremendous. So that's what Assen sort of, I always think back to that time, that weekend.
You've been a slag for gossip ever since, right?
I was born there and then.
I mean, you covered quite a bit of that, Neil. I mean, I remember having deep sympathy for Colin Edwards. I mean, that was that one Grand Prix win seemed to be in the bag and eluded him. And then I don't think we can forget that Assen was the scene of the USA's last victory. Ben Spies, taking his win. Yamaha were running a retro livery that weekend, weren't they? Was it the red and white?
Yeah, I think they were. Yes, yeah.
I mean, obviously, Yamaha Motor Europe being based in Amsterdam means that they've tended to connect quite well with Assen in the past, I think, in terms of doing activities and activations. Was it only a couple of years?
There's a lot of people from Yamaha were sort of wandering around at the time, precisely because it is such a big place. So yeah.
Yeah, if you are a history buff, I mean, Assen's a great place to do so. I think Honda did some sort of celebration a couple of years ago, right? They had Mick Doohan there. I think the first Japanese Grand Prix winner for Honda, his name escapes me now. For somebody who says he likes history, a very forgetful memory has to be said. But yeah, Assen memories though. I mean, I think that sensational Grand Prix, I want to say maybe 92, where you had the Swans-Lawson crash. And I think Swans may have broken his leg or something in the accident. I can't remember his hip. Yeah. And then that meant that I think it was Alex Crivier took his first Spanish win for his country in the Premier class. And, kind of look what happened after that. But Dave, have you got anything that really stands out for you from Assen?
No, because there's so many things, like the 2015, 2006, it's just a fantastic racetrack. And but again, also if I remember correctly, it was also the scene of the Frankie Keeley, Carl Fogarty punch-up. Yes, the dressing gown incident. So yeah, it's just had so much, but it's a fantastic track. The layout really suits close racing, and it suits lots of different bikes as well. So it makes, there are lots of different places where each particular bike can shine, and that makes things a lot better. I also remember, I think, Jorge Lorenzo being bumped off and at the Strubben hairpin, and then claiming that he was going to get a new engine because his engine blew up when it was in the gravel and all sorts. It was, and of course, that heroic effort in 13, yeah, exactly, where he broke his collarbone during Thursday practice, and flew to Spain, had surgery, came back, and then raced on Saturday, because we still raced on Saturday then. Just so many memories, so many. I mean, and it's a great event.
Yeah, it was a broken collarbone anyway. I mean,
I mean, it was extremely unwise. Also, because then 2 weeks later, he fell off at the Saxon ring and broke it again, and bent the plate, and had to have it removed and replated again. So,
yeah, I was going to say, maybe the racing over the last couple of years hasn't been fantastic at Assen. I think you have to go back to 2018, where we had that all-time great race, where there was maybe 7 or 8 guys at the front fighting with Mark. That was absolutely sensational. But there always seems to be, well, not always, but more often than not, there seems to be some kind of big dramatic event that unfolds during the weekend of the Dutch TT. You mentioned there, Dave, about Lorenzo breaking his collarbone in 13. I think back to Fabio Quartararo getting a long lap penalty for punting Aleix Espargaro off track in 2022, and that causing a great deal of controversy and fallout in the weeks afterwards. Lynn Jarvis writing an open letter basically to Freddie Spence. Well, it was a press release basically saying that Yamaha management no longer had faith in the FIM stewards, which is quite a massive step to take at the time. You think of 2021 when Maverick Vinales finished second to Fabio Quartararo, yet had an absolute face like thunder on the podium and in Parc Ferme afterwards. And that was the weekend where we found out that Maverick was actually talking about trying to get out of his Yamaha deal and move to Aprilia at the end of that year. And that was before he obviously tried to blow his engine up in Austria and then got sacked. So yeah, that was pretty crazy. And yeah, there just seems to be these kind of events where things kick off, and maybe the racing isn't the most exciting thing on track, but we always have something quite juicy to talk about. So I'm excited to see what unfolds this weekend. Of course, there's been so much rider talk and rider announcement buzz since the Italian Grand Prix that we really are going to have to catch up on quite a lot on Thursday when we get there.
And there he is. Hello, Collin. Welcome to the podcast. This is the second time we've had you on the Paddock Pass podcast. You ready for the home Grand Prix? How's things? And are you going to be sweating like the rest of us in the Netherlands, which is going to be pretty weird?
Well, yeah, I've enjoyed a lot the 3 weeks off. So, yeah, I'm really quite prepared for Assen this weekend. Let's see what the weather's going to do. But at the moment, it looks very good.
Collin, I spoke to you after your fantastic race at Mugello, and saying, you're looking forward to. Is there going to be a lot of pressure at Assen? Now, I know you must have loads and loads of media commitments because everyone is going to want to talk to you. But the interesting thing was, you said, "Look, it's just another race. Yes, it means there's a lot of media attention, but you can't treat it as like your home GP. You have to treat it as just another race."
Yeah, for me, it's just a race. It's a lot of media attention around it, but for me, it's just a normal race. And yeah, for sure, a lot of people expect me to do very good here. But to be fair, it's only my second time in here, so yeah.
That's the other thing, because I mean, you are Dutch, and you are a Dutch racer, but you went to Spain and have done most of your racing in Spain, haven't you?
Yeah, I've started when I was 8 years old. I get already to Spain, so we went quite early. So yeah, I've done all my childhood and stuff I did in Spain and Italy. So yeah, I didn't experience a lot on the Assen circuit.
Is that kind of the route, do you feel, that Northern European riders have to take, Collin, when they're 6 or 7, get down to Spain or Italy as soon as possible, because that's where the most competitive junior championships are?
Yeah, I think at the moment it's just Spain. I don't know, Italy, I've not seen a lot of people anymore there. So yeah, I think at the moment it's Spain mainly. But yeah, in my time it was very important go to another country and try to search the competition, because I was winning a lot already in Netherlands, and yeah, there was for us no point to stay in Netherlands, and yeah, my dad decided to go to Italy.
Collin, what do you think about Assen as a circuit? Is it a track, a trajectory that you like riding, or is it, not your favorite?
Well, I really don't have a real favorite. Yeah, my favorite's Imola, but we don't have it on the calendar, so no, I enjoy the circuit. It's a very nice one. The layout is quite interesting. Got some fast sections, some slower parts. So yeah, it ain't bad. But yeah, let's see how it is this weekend again. Last year was my first time there, so yeah, interesting.
The other interesting thing you talked to me about at Mugello was one of the reasons you've been able to be so strong is that during the practice, you spend a lot of time riding alone, because you have to be able to make the lap time alone. And what we see a lot of is in Moto3 is riders, just trying to get a fast toe to try and qualify well, and then sort of, stick in the slipstream somehow. Was this something you've learned yourself? Is this something that you were coached to do? And how do you see that?
Well, I started doing this in Junior GP already in my last 3-4 races. I just tried to get this feeling also in the World Championship. And yeah, for sure, Peter also likes it a lot to work alone. So it's also the team that pushes me to it. And yeah, for sure, sometimes you need a little slipstream, but I mean, even in Mugello, I qualified P4, so yeah, we can't complain about the speed alone.
Collin, it's your second season. Sorry, now it's your second season in Moto3. Do you already feel some limitations by what you can do just because of your size? I mean, the motorcycle is clearly competitive, but what's kind of your feeling about the class and what you can do?
Yeah, I think the class is a bit more. Yeah, I think with Alonso at the moment, it ain't easy because he's quite fast and he's doing the things quite right at the moment. Mainly in the practices, he's quite fast. In the races, we are more or less equal. But no, I think my limitations. Yeah, I don't really have limitations. I think just the uphills are a bit more difficult for me. And yeah, maybe the movement also is a bit more difficult than normal, but yeah, I've chose to do another year in Moto3, so I have to deal with it.
Colin, there's obviously a big change in Moto3 for this year with the Pirelli tyres coming in. We've seen it have a bit of an effect on the racing. It seems that there's maybe less guys that can be fighting at the front towards the end of the race. Tyre conservation has come into play a little bit more than it was with the Dunlop tyres. How have you adapted to the Pirellis so quickly?
Well, I think yeah, Qatar wasn't easy because the right side suffers a lot. So, and the same is for Portimao. But yeah, after these two races, I started to feel quite well with it. Yeah, you have to ride them a bit different to the Dunlops. It's a bit more important to save the tire till the end. But I think at the moment we do a very good job with the team, and yeah, we found a setting to also save the tires a bit more. So, and yeah, also you have to change a little bit the riding style. So.
When you say save the tires, what are you doing? Are you more gentle with the throttle? Are you a little more patient with the throttle? Are you just trying to be more smooth?
I think mainly you have to is the picking up of the bike. You have to be I think it's more like a Moto2 style at the moment. What you have to try with the bike.
Do you think that's going to make the transition to Moto2 a little bit easier as well? Because we've seen in the past that some riders will go from Moto3 to Moto2 and just completely disappear. Really, sort of very talented riders, and sometimes they take a little bit of time to get into it, and other times they just sort of like fail. Do you think this is going to make your transition? Because I presume soon enough you will be going to Moto2. Do you think it's going to make your transition a little bit easier?
Yeah, I think it for sure helps. The picking up of the bike is quite important, and this is also what you need to do in Moto2. So. Yeah, I think it would help. But yeah, for sure, before we go to Moto2, we have to train a lot for this. So, yeah.
Colin, we've had a 3-week break, and that's always a good chance to sort of look back on what you've done so far this season. We've had 7 races. You've had 6 top 6 finishes, 3 podiums, 1 victory, 3rd in the championship. I mean, it's been a pretty good start, but then there's just this little Colombian rider who is also in pretty decent form. I mean, how would you assess your start to the year?
Well, Qatar isn't my favorite, so yeah, I struggled also last year there. So I knew it was going to be difficult, but then to finish there in P5, I think, yeah, it was not too bad to start the year. And also, yeah, Portimao, I struggle also a little bit. But yeah, then from America, I started to get the feeling a bit more. Yeah, I had the crash in the race, but yeah, the speed was definitely there, so we couldn't complain about that. And yeah, Jerez, I just felt strong all the weekend, and yeah, when David crashed, I just tried to take over the lead because I knew Munoz wasn't able to ride the pace what we normally do. So yeah, I just tried to pull the group, and yeah, finally I lead the whole race and win it. And yeah, I just tried to keep that momentum till now, more or less.
Colin, what's the weaknesses of Alonso? I mean, we see on the TV that when it comes down to the last lap, then he's got a bit of a stranglehold at the moment on Moto3. I mean, do you kind of go into the last 2 laps of him thinking, right, I've got to make some sort of move now, otherwise this kid's going to be, I don't know, doing a crazy move and taking the Grand Prix?
Well, Mugello, he was quite smart. He waited a bit until the last, I think, 3 laps he started to push away. And yeah, exactly when he pushed away, I was on P6, I think, on the end of the back of the group. And yeah, there was for me a little feeling like I need to get as soon as back to the front of the group and try to get back to him. And I think, yeah, it was just 1 lap late, but yeah, I think if I had another lap, I could do a move on him and try to get the win.
What do you think you need to improve for the second half of the season? Because you're clearly in contention for the championship, but to win it means you're going to have to find something, make a step, make a small step. What's your weakness at the moment, do you think?
I think it's more being patient and don't rush too much things. Is what I did in America. I learned from that one. So yeah, I think it's already much better than before. But I think mainly it's being patient and yeah, also in the free practices and stuff. Don't be angry about a P4, P5 if you do it alone. So yeah, I've struggled a little bit with being patient.
Again, this is something which always sort of like really surprises me in that motorcycle racing is such an adrenaline sport. You know, you're just everything. You know, every nerve is tingling. All of you, you're just complete rush of adrenaline, and yet the most important thing is to be patient, to wait for the right moment, and especially with all respect, you're a teenager. I mean, teenagers are not known for their patience. When I was 18. I was not the most patient person in the entire universe. So, how, can you train patience? Or is it just sort of learning to wait and see?
Yeah, I think you have to learn it. You have to like get into it and just do it because I think it's something also you can train for it, but that's quite difficult because you have to be mentally strong for these things. But yeah, I think that's mainly what World Championship is. I think, yeah, everyone is fast, so mentally is a big point in World Championship. And yeah, one of them is being patient. And I think if you can keep the patience, you have a big advantage.
Collin, what is your contract status? Is there like a route for you through the peer mobility group? How's it sitting at the moment?
Well, at the moment, yeah, we try to find our way. We won't say too much, but I think yeah, we have some things that we can do for next year. There's a possibility to stay in Moto3. But yeah, also we can look for maybe the step up. And yeah, we have different sort of options at the moment.
That's good to hear, Collin. One thing just about the Moto 3 races that we've seen this year. I mean, we've seen lap records completely smashed. We've seen race records annihilated all year. I think every track we've gone to, we've been racing maybe 20 seconds faster than the previous year. We know the Pirellis have maybe made a difference, but how much of a difference has the kind of the updated and the new KTM / Husqvarna that you're riding at the moment? How much has that made a difference, do you think, this year?
I think it made a really big difference because they made a bike that can turn very naturally. So yeah, it's I think also it's not only the tires that made the big improvement because really the tires were also better, but I think the KTM also they made a very very good step in making the turning better. So and yeah, overall for me the bike feels good and yeah, it is a big improvement from last year.
Did you lose anything when you go in gaining the turning? Have you had to sacrifice something?
No, not really. I think you have to like get more used with the naturally turning. This is the only problem I struggle a little bit with, but I think overall we get adapted quite good to it. I've done a test last year in Valencia, so already there we tried to find the way to it. But yeah, no, I think this bike from this year is a big improvement what they did.
Collin, can you maybe just explain to our listeners how you kind of have had to adapt your riding style? A few riders that are on the KTM this year have said that they have to be maybe a little less aggressive with the braking than, say, last year when it was just about braking as aggressively as possible into the turn. You know, how have you kind of changed your riding style to get the best out of this bike this year?
Well, I'm still quite late on the brakes always, like I always do. And yeah, it's still working quite well. It's a bit more difficult what I'm doing. My way of riding this bike, I'm a bit different to every other rider, I think, at the moment. But no, I think yeah, it's difficult to adapt if you come from the 2020 bike and then step up to the 24 bike. It's a big difference. But yeah, I think if you're a talented rider, you can adapt to it easy.
Collin, who are you training with, hanging out with, riding with? I mean, you mentioned Imola's like your favorite track. I mean, is that a case where you turn up there and you're riding some sort of super sport bike to enjoy it? I mean, what's your kind of environment?
Well, the Imola track I like because I did the CIV there, the Italian Championships, and I've always done good there. So yeah, the track also is very nice. It's historical, so it's a very nice track. But no, living I do in Barcelona and Mallorca more or less. I train with some more GP riders and with some 600 riders. but yeah, no, mostly I train in Barcelona, so no, I'm enjoying it a lot with some riders there, and yeah, just enjoy a little bit the life also.
Yeah, Colin, we know that Grand Prix riders, training is a huge part of their life. But aside from that, when you're kind of switching off, how do you kind of do that? What are your sort of interests aside from, Moto3 riding, training, that kind of thing? What are the things?
Well, one of the things I like a lot is cycling. So yeah, I always keep training more or less. For me, it's a normal day is going cycling, and then after, yeah, just go somewhere, but not. For me, my most of the part of the life is just cycling. Yeah, really. Also.
Yeah.
Where are you going cycling? I mean, climbs. I mean, are you going scenic cycling, if you like, or are you going training?
No, most of the time just training. I like to let my body suffer a lot.
You're in good
well,
company.
Dave just
then.
told us there's 12 meters of elevation above sea level at Assen, so you're not going to be panting too much going up the hills, training this week, are you?
No, in Netherlands is for me always the average. That's very important.
Yeah.
Colin, one brief thing. Our listeners might be curious. Obviously your English is impeccable, but some people might be interested to know why you have a slight Birmingham accent. I mean, is there? Did you learn? Did you spend any time in England when you were younger, growing up?
No, not really. I just train with some English people, so yeah, I'm British. Yeah, I speak a lot of British with them. Well, I did stay a long time with an Australian guy. Is in Red Bull Rookies Cup at the moment, so I speak a lot with him. But in that year, my accent changed a lot to Australian. But now I feel I'm going back to British again.
Absolutely.
Colin, just before we let you go, what will getting on the podium or taking a victory at Assen mean for you? I mean, is it going to be a big deal? Will you have some friends, family there? Is it going to be a traditional home GP of expectation, but also a lot of fun?
I think it will be a lot of people. Yeah, from my town already more than 800 people go. So I think it will be very, very nice. Yeah. If I win, I think, I think I will be immortal here in Netherlands.
But it's been fantastic having you on the show, Colin. Thanks ever so much for your time. We can appreciate it's a busy week for you as well. Best of luck. We'll see you I'm not going to say it. How do you feel about Assen being called the Cathedral? Do you think it's slightly silly, or do you think it's a good name?
Really, I don't care really.
Oh, there we go. I'm signing up to the Collin Veijer fan club. That's it. I want my T-shirt. Thanks, Colin. Cheers for your time. We'll see you at the circuit.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Dank je wel, Colin. Top.
Cheers, Colin.
Geen probleem. Bedankt. Thank you.
See you. Bye.
Lovely to have Collin Veijer on the show. Well done for sorting that one, Dave. I mean, we're not sort of bigging this kid up, are we? I mean, we know David Alonso has, some authority in Moto3 this year, but I think the Dutch fans and the Husqvarna team, can be quite optimistic about his chances, right? I mean, he's fast.
No, yeah, I mean, he is naturally fast. I mean, we've seen a few Dutch riders come through, and they've been good, but not special. And Colin is up against that sort of level of special. He has the thing that impresses me most about Colin is his mental strength. The things that he was saying about, being learning patience, being mentally strong, because the mental strength required not to panic. As someone sort of like pulls away when you find yourself in a group to wait and work your way forward. That's what is really, really it's difficult to learn, difficult to do and be able to do it. It takes an enormous amount of self-confidence. And also when you speak to him after a good race or after a bad race, he's the same either way. He's very, very he's very mature about it. He's, he doesn't get excited, but he also doesn't get depressed about it. And he's thinking about sort of like the longer term. So he's just very, he's a very smart kid, and he has all the pieces are in place for him to succeed and do very well.
I think it's a pretty tricky job being a Moto3 title contender this year if your name isn't David Alonso, because Alonso, he's kind of got that Mick Doohan thing going at the moment where it's not just like, I want to win everything. It's like, I want to pulverize my rivals in every session. And one of the kind of crazy things about Alonso in the last couple of races is that he's not just intent on topping sessions, he's intent on topping sessions by 0.6 of a second, 0.8 of a second margins in Moto 3 that are just absolutely astonishing and crazy and very, very, very uncommon. And I think that having to come up against that sort of consistency and sheer speed every session, one session you're off it, you look and you see, oh my God, I'm a second and a half behind the guy that I need to beat on Sunday. And I think that can start to wear you down a bit. And I think we've already started to see that with Danny Holgado, who at the start of the season looked as though he was going to be David's chief contender. This year, Holgado's had a couple of bad races now on the bounce. He was 6th in Barcelona and he had a terrible weekend in Mugello where he was 14th. Collin, what impresses me about him is that no matter what Alonso's doing, Collin's sticking to his own game plan and he's doing what he needs to do to be ready for Sunday. And it doesn't matter whether Alonso was 0.8 ahead of him at the end of the third practice session. He's going to make sure that he's absolutely prepared for what he has to do on the Sunday. And we saw that at Mugello where he came so close to beating Alonso, despite Alonso topping every session before the race. So, that I think aligns with what Dave was saying with regards to his mental strength. He is assured enough to know that what he is doing during the weekend is necessary. And he doesn't get kind of distracted or his head doesn't fall off a little bit when he looks at the timing screens, which I think is a massive, massive strength when you're just 18 years of age.
Yeah, exactly. And Alonso is basically, he's beating everyone on Friday. If you can beat him on Friday, you don't have to work as hard on Sunday to actually beat them. The people are lining up on the Moto3 grid thinking that they've already lost. And I think Collin doesn't really think about it. As far as he's concerned, the race is on Sunday, and all the rest before that is fine. It's all good fun. The only thing that matters is you've got a decent qualifying position, and then you work on the race. And that's very much the approach that he's taken through all of his training as well. And it's not just, it's not just Collin. It's all of the top racers have that same attitude that you're working towards Sunday. Sunday is when they hand the points out. That's when you have to get everything right.
I'm just curious about his next career step because, of course, he, as you guys have pointed out, he has the abilities and the skills to make a name for himself in Grand Prix. The next step to Moto2 can be very difficult. Just look at Izan Guevara. He's had more than enough time to really make his mark or make some sort of impression in Moto2, but it just hasn't happened. And the reason I asked him about the Pura Mobility Group route is because, if we hear some of the rumors being true and they're looking to trim their racing operations somewhat, then maybe the IntactGP team won't be running white or orange bikes next year. We don't know. Then where does he go? That kind of step obviously wasn't enough for a Yumo Sasaki. He's negotiating his own minefield, it has to be said, in Moto2 at the moment. So I just hope, Collin doesn't fall into that pit of just being mid-pack or lower top 20 obscurity. That's the Netherlands have a real talent there. So I hope he makes the right choice.
Yeah, he's got a very good manager in Laurens Klein-Koerkamp, manages Michael van der Mark as well. A very smart man. So and Laurens used to be part of Yamaha. He understands the paddock very well. He will make sensible decisions. I think also, again, we come back to this sort of mental strength. I think the difference between like Sasaki took a long time to win a Moto3 race. Izan Guevara was a natural talent. But he never really had to sort of figure stuff out. He could just rely on his talent. And Moto2 is the place where your talent starts to run out, where it stops being sufficient. You start to need other things. So I think Collin will adapt to it. Also, he's likely to take sort of the right approach to it, which is, to understand this is a different class. You start working on it, like we saw with Pedro Acosta, who understood that, okay, this is not Moto3, this is a different class. Now we take a completely different approach and we try to do that. Now, Pedro Acosta is generational talent. Collin is very, very talented, but I don't think he's a generational talent in the way that Pedro Acosta is. But he can still go a very, very long way just by approach, hard work, dedication, and intelligence. And that, to me, is very much what Collin seems to have.
If any of our listeners want to get sort of Collin Veijer t-shirts ahead of the Dutch Grand Prix this weekend, do they email you, Dave? Is that how they go about it?
No, you just send an email to Collin Veijer at stophorse.nl. But no, I've no idea. And again, like the Stophorse, like he says, 800 people from his town. I think there's only about 6,000-7,000 people there. So that's like a very substantial part of the town that'll be turning up.
Yeah, and can you imagine when you were 18 years of age having that sort of expectation on your shoulder? 800 people showing up expecting to see you do something. I mean,
I mean, they'll be going expected to see him win. I mean, he's got to beat David Alonso to do that, but you know, the chance that he will be on the podium on Sunday is going to be is pretty big, you would think.
Speaking of fast things, as I mentioned, I've taken loan of a KTM 990 Duke, and guys, wow! I mean, the bike is, I think, is over 95% new, so it's not like a reshaped 890 or just a resculptured version of another KTM Duke. And to be honest, it handles like a 250. It's a really minimalist motorcycle, and KTM make a design shape like that anyway. I mean, they're very trim. There's nothing excess on the bike, if you like. And just riding it, you have that sort of nimble, agile character. And as soon as you open the throttle, wow, the torque just like takes you off. I mean, I haven't had as much kilometers as I would, choose to have on the bike so far, but I've been really impressed. And I would encourage anybody who's sort of in the market or for a naked bike or wants to maybe change machine or manufacturers to take one for a test ride, because it's bloody impressive. And Dave, on that subject, I've emailed KTM Netherlands, and hopefully we're going to get you a 1290 Super Adventure S to be able to ride to Red Bull Ring. So that's the wheels are in motion, so to speak. So let's hope we can get you in orange and away from that BMW.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a lovely beer. I really do genuinely love my bike. I did ride it yesterday to go and see some motocross, which was very, very enjoyable. I encourage everyone to go to see a club motocross race, because it's something a bit special. But I am quite looking forward to having a go on a KTM. There's they've got lots of sort of nice parts, and yeah, they make a fantastic engine. They really do.
Neil, he's watching motocross, and he's a big fan of Moto3. The moment he starts drinking coffee with some milk in there, we're going to have to see if there's some sort of Mission Impossible style mask over this imposter. I'm getting slightly concerned.
I always knew it.
The need for speed. There we go. Listen, let's just move on to our predictions for Assen, just to finalise the last segment of this show. As you guys have pointed out, Marco Bezzecchi won the Grand Prix last year, if memory serves. No, he won the sprint.
Yeah. Okay. Pekka won quite convincingly last year, I think.
Yeah, by half a second or something. But it was one of those. I'm slightly worried this weekend. Sorry to cut off the end of your question there, Ad. But I have a slight lingering feeling that this might be a bit of a kind of Mugello repeat, where we have 4 or 5 guys on track more or less together, but all just rotating around the track, pretty much wheels in line, and doing a bit of follow the leader, because Pekka will have qualified well, got out front early on, and will be setting like this kind of searing pace. And we've seen that in the last 2 races at Assen, really, where the ingredients have all been there for something really nice and spicy, and it's just not quite delivered. You've come away from it feeling a bit disappointed, a bit let down. So I'm quite hopeful that for the racing's sake, that maybe someone can get up amongst the and kind of shake it up a little bit, because I think if Pecco qualifies well and starts well, gets ahead on the first lap or two, then the chances of a thrilling race are limited, I would say.
Yeah, but I think the difference with Assen is that GT chicane is the Geert Timmer chicane, where there is you can make the difference. You can do something. You can try something. At Mugello, it's much more difficult. You come in Bucine, the last corner, there isn't really an opportunity. I mean, there are ways to try to pass people, but it's much more of a plan thing. Whereas the GT chicane is just, close your eyes, carry the speed through Ramshoek, through that fast left, just get close enough, and then you've got a chance. You can try something. You might get it right, you might get it wrong. It might work, it might not. But you can at least sort of attempt it. So, I mean, we've seen so many classic passes through that corner that I think it's going to be, if someone can stay with him, then I then I think it could be a bit more exciting. But I think things are going to work out a little bit differently.
Dave, I never understand in the GT chicane why people leave the door open. I mean, surely the best tactic is to hold the inside, not leave any room, because even if you're slower on the flick through, then nobody's going to go around the outside. I mean,
they can and they do. That's the thing.
How many times have you seen that? I mean, you have to do a Valentino Rossi and cheat and fly across the chicane and then take a win.
He did not cheat. He got. I mean, that was Mark Marquez getting hoisted by his own petard. That was absolutely classic.
It was a robbery.
It was a robbery. It was a deserved one. Mark tried to bump him off, and he paid the price. But no, you can. I mean, the thing is, if you try and hold that, you're losing so much corner speed there that what you can do is just like cut underneath at the corner, or you can cut around the outside. You're sacrificing so much to try to hold that inside line that you then also risk someone coming, breaking late around the outside. It's just a really, really difficult corner to defend. There's a lot of lines. And that corner really starts at the it starts a couple of corners earlier. It really starts coming out of Mavenmere around sort of the bottom end where people are really starting to build the speed. So people are lining up corners at the chicane 3 or 4 corners beforehand, and that's what makes it such a great track.
I might have been slightly down on my predictions for this weekend's events in my previous comment, but I would also like to point out that last year we had, 5 guys, I think, pretty much within a second and a half of each other fighting at the front, and that included Aleix Espargaro and Brad Binder. Binder obviously was very, very unfortunate to miss out on the podium, touched the green on the final lap in both the sprint and the feature race, I think, and lost third on both occasions. On the Sunday, that meant Aleix Espargaro got the third for Aprilia. So, KTM and Aprilia have decent track records here. Certainly going off last year, they were in the mix at least. They weren't quite on Pecco's level, but they were there. And you look at Yamaha's record at this track, and I know Yamaha is a kind of a shadow of the force that it once was, but 11 wins around Assen in the MotoGP era, that is quite a haul of victories. I mean, this used to always be the kind of Yamaha track where Lorenzo or Rossi would absolutely clean up, or then Vinales and Quartararo in kind of more recent years. And Fabio Quartararo was on the podium in the sprint last year, I seem to recall. So maybe if Fabio can do something remarkable, you could also have maybe a Yamaha up in the mix, which would really kind of juice things up. And personally, if we're talking about potential wild cards, I mean, maybe calling a race winner this year a wild card is a bit off, but I mean, this is a great track for Maverick Vinales. This is one of his 3 great tracks where he's always fast. He crashed out of the Sunday race last year quite early on, insisted that he had the speed for the victory. As I previously mentioned, Aprilia has some good records here. Aleix has been extremely competitive the last couple of seasons. So I'm excited to see what Maverick can do. I think if it's the right Maverick that shows up this weekend with his head screwed on, obviously his future for next year is sorted. I think it could be juicy to see him fighting at the front.
So, Neil, you've gone from tipping an all Ducati affair to covering most of the grid. Is there anyone from Honda that you think might be able to get on the podium?
Yeah, I think Luca Marini is actually going to turn his season around 180 and will manage to get his breakout podium here at Assen as well.
But Dave, Fabio Quartararo and Alex Rins are going to be facing their GP League question from us about how their testing progress has been going. They had a 3-day test in Valencia, 2.5 of which were affected by rain, I believe. But then they took part on this Monster Energy Legends Day, and we've actually going to put some clips from that day, some interviews with Fabio and Pecco that I managed to grab at Silverstone last week, and we'll put it on Patreon for our Patreon listeners. But then I understand Yamaha flew directly from Silverstone and had another 1-day test at Valencia again, I think, in the dry. And Quartararo was quite effusive in his praise of the productivity of the test on social media. So perhaps, Neil's not being completely unrealistic here. The M1 is making some forward gains.
I mean, you can't fault Yamaha for trying. They really are trying, and the bike does suit that layout. I mean, one place it always lost out of was the Strubben hairpin, where it just couldn't sort of get the pickup and the drive. So yeah, we shall have to wait and see. But I think at the moment the Ducatis, no, the KTMs to an extent as well, and the Aprilias. I think Neil's point about Maverick is a very, very good one. Aleix very fast around Assen as well. The track really suits what the Aprilia can do, so it's going to be interesting. But if you don't mind me saying so, I think you're all overlooking one thing, which is that in 2025, Marc Marquez is going to be the teammate of Pecco Bagnaia, and he has just had his contracts announced, and he's going to want to establish the order within the factory Ducati garage by making his points to Pecco by beating him at Assen. So I think Mark is going to have something a little bit extra at Assen. He's good at Assen. He's good everywhere, but he is good at Assen. He can make the difference at this at Assen. He can find a way, and Assen is a track which, which will let you find a way, if you see what I mean. The disadvantages of the GP23 are not going to be as big against the GP24 there, and he's going to be really, really highly motivated. So I'm going to say I think Marc Marquez is going to beat Pecco Bagnaia, and it's going to be very interesting to see where Pedro Acosta ends up, because I think Acosta is going to be, again, Acosta is special, and you can find a way to make the difference and at Assen, and so that's what he's going to do.
Yeah, maybe it's a little bit far away from Mugello to carry on any momentum. I mean, I wonder how Enea Bastianini is also going to fare, because Mugello was a bit of a turning point, I think, in his season. But for me, I'm going to put my chips on Brad Binder. Why not? Somebody different. If we go for a Ducati rider, we now have a KTM rider. I think your point about Pedro Acosta is really good, Dave. This would be one of those circuits where you'd say a MotoGP rookie might struggle slightly in terms of sort of working out the intricacies and the braking markers and whatever else. But Acosta's just taken the whole season in his stride so far. But yeah, I'll just say Binder for maybe, a different direction for the KTM team this year. Neil, who's your pick from? I mean, your exposition was so eloquent before, but I got lost amongst the sort of 7 or 8 riders that you named.
Can't remember who you said was going to win.
It was so brilliant and so thrilling that you completely switched off halfway through it, right? Just a quick thing on Acosta. I mean, this is an interesting track for him. His track record here is really quite interesting. Just to touch on it briefly, I think he's only had one full Grand Prix weekend at this track when, he's ridden in every session, because his rookie year in Moto3, I think he crashed high-sided out of the GT chicane on the Saturday morning, was run over. I seem to remember his chest was run over and we were all quite worried, and he got taken to hospital, got discharged on the Sunday morning and raced, but was, far from fit and got through the race, managed a 4th place still. But, it was a pretty crazy weekend and injury affected, and that was his first visit to Assen. Then he missed 2022 because he had broken his leg just after the German Grand Prix that year. So last year in Moto2, you remember he showed up and he was like, I feel like a complete rookie here, not just in the Moto2, but an Assen rookie. So when you compare that lack of track experience to the likes of Bagnaia, Marquez, I mean, it's quite a big thing to overcome. However, we said the same thing, I think, at Kota earlier this year, and that certainly didn't slow Pedro down. So yeah, you just wouldn't rule him out. But yeah, I think I'm just going to be quite boring and go with Pecco, because he's got the track layout of Assen tattooed on his arm. So it's like he's a God-given right to take wins here.
So we have Marquez, Bagnaia, and Binder. And we've got to say Maverick at some point. Maybe a Maverick pole position or a sprint win or a podium somewhere. Yeah, on a Saturday, on Sundays.
100%. Maverick is, at some point, Maverick is going to be at the front, at or near the front. So, yeah, I mean, Maverick podium, I think, is a good shout.
Yeah, and
everybody...
Sorry.
Oh, go. Fire away.
Just a quick word on Martin. Martin wasn't on the podium last year at Assen, but I think he crashed in qualifying, qualified 12th, but did have actually really strong speed in the Sunday race and got himself into that victory fight sort of towards the end. So, I wouldn't completely rule out Jorge Martin either. He'll be in the mix.
Yeah. Now that you shed all this Ducati factory team bullshit around him, then maybe that also clears the slate for him somewhat. I mean, it could be interesting to see how he goes for the rest of the year. He could adopt Pecco's own mantra of go free, and then he's pushing the results and takes the championship. Let's see.
Yeah, he has gained a massive amount of motivation. I mean, it's not as if he was short of motivation, but now he really has motivation to sort of, really sort of rub it in. And it's going to be interesting to see how he handles, because he's leading the championship now. So it's going to be interesting to see how he handles leading the championship.
What do you think, guys? Are we worthy of our place in the media center, or we should be serving some product in the fritures with mayonnaise outside the gates? Let us know. Of course, we have the Alpine Stars Paddock Pass Podcast Fantasy League. So, put a bit of your money where your mouth is, so to speak. Take your pick before Q1. Don't forget that. That's an important factor. Submit your team, and let's see who can really bank the points as MotoGP gets going again this weekend.
One thing about making predictions, it might be a bit tricky because it looks like there could be, it looks like Saturday and Sunday are going to be dry, not particularly warm, but dry. Friday looks like being wet. And if there is a wet Friday, then it complicates things a lot. So it's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah, and I'd just like to add that if you're not already, sign up to our Patreon page and become a Paddock Insider, or what's the lower tier called? Paddock Inductee, I think it's called now. And there'll be lots of exclusive photos of Adam entering the circuit next to the cathedral sign. We'll make that a Patreon exclusive benefit for anyone that signs up this weekend. So you do not want to miss that. The look of scorn is not to be missed.
And what I should really do is attach the GoPro to the front of my bike and then film the argument of me trying to get into the bloody paddock on Thursday afternoon.
Do it.
The possibilities for content are sort of innumerable. I'm quite looking forward to the paparazzi greeting as I drive through the tunnel, which I quite enjoyed in the past, of all the past winners of the Dutch TT. But now it's got that stupid banner over the top of it, so it's not the best. But
the
yes,
TT is like, the TT is kind of made out of it's like a Stonehenge kind of style. Yeah. It really is quite corny, isn't it?
Well, the reason for that is because in the late Salian, between 150,000 and 130,000 years ago, as the ice retreated from the north of Holland, it dumped what is called boulder clay, and it's called boulder clay because it consists of clay and boulders. So there's lots and lots of actually great big chunks of basically Norwegian rock strewn all over that part. And if you go around the various regions, there's what they call hunebeds, which are these Neolithic graves, which is very, very large stones all stacked on each other where there were burials previously. So that is why there is the Stonehenge-style TT on the side of the A28, the motorway running up towards Assen.
Boulder Dash.
Is that not what the locals call what comes out of your mouth during Paddock Pass podcast, Dave? Boulder clay. Stop talking boulder clay.
Talking boulder clay. Yeah, no, I am talking absolutely. I happen to be reading up on this because I find it. I've been reading a book about the Wadden Islands, which are the islands above Holland. And the Dutch prehistory happens to be mildly interesting to me. So I'm a weirdo like that.
Come for the bikes, so that's stay for the Neolithic.
That's right. Yeah,
rock chat.
Yeah. There is. I mean, genuinely, if you like a little bit of Stone Age history, there's a few of these Stone Age. There are these little Stone Age graves dotted all around that part of that part of the country.
Yeah, thanks for listening to Geology Weekly. We'll be back next century with another firm offering. But yes, anyway. As Neil pointed out, guys, join us on Patreon. We've redefined the tiers somewhat, and there is going to be some extra content, some extra goodies. And of course, it's all starting on Thursday with our first Paddock Note Show, where the three of us will be talking about what we've heard and what was said at the TT Circuit Assen. And as you pointed out right at the top of the show, Neil, there's going to be some juicy stuff because there's several riders who are going to be talking about their contract status for next year. Some riders who don't know their futures, maybe some who know their future but can't say it. But there's going to be lots of chat, lots of speculation as well. So don't forget to check out that show on Thursday. And then on Friday and Saturday, the Paddock No Show will be for our Paddock insiders. So get on that $10 tier and not only pick up those shows, but loads more content throughout the rest of the season, all the way through to December. So
very quickly, we are recording this on Monday. People will be listening to this sort of Wednesday and Thursday. Do we think there will have been rider announcements by the time people actually hear this? Because it feels like there's just going to be a flood of announcements over the next few days ahead of Thursday, which is why people need to listen to the Thursday show.
Also, I think there's a good chance it happens, post Sachsenring. So you go into another summer break and there's no real chance to chase up on these stories, as tends to be the fashion. We were kind of lucky, Dave, that we had the Mugello test after all this, all the crazy activity with Jorge Martin and Marc Marquez. And then, of course, the Enea Bastianini news was not confirmed, but it was very much in the air. So, who knows what's going to be pre-post Assen as well as pre-post Sachsenring. So there's going to be a lot going on in the next 2 weeks. We're going to be busy, guys, that's for sure. Anyway, listen, thank you ever so much for listening to this week's Paddock Pass podcast. Thank you to Renthal and to Fly Racing and, of course, to KTM. We'll be back bringing you another production on Thursday.